Hi, my name is Anna. I'm a fantasy writer who sometimes makes videos, and today we're doing a bit of a different kind of video. So I recently hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and I'm so thankful for anyone who sticks around this channel to check on me and come back and say hi and watch my videos. It truly means a lot to me. I thought I would stop and make a video in celebration of that and leave it up to you all what I would make. So I had a couple of ideas, and thank you to everyone who voted on my community tab. The video idea that ended up winning was reading and reacting to my very first novel, and that is the sci-fi dystopia that I was writing in 2017/2018. So that's pretty much what we're doing today. It's just going to be a bit of a fun romp down memory lane. Here is my printed copy. I think she's about 70 or 75K if I remember right. I should probably give a little bit of background on this project. So let's see, let's rewind the clock. I had been out of college for 2 years, I think, when I picked this project up. It was an idea that I had when I was in high school, but never really got off the ground. I realized that I really missed writing when I got out of college. My writing brain was like completely broken. And part of that was realizing that I loved genre fiction, and genre fiction was what I wanted to write. So I went back to that old story idea, and this was that. I did NaNoWriMo for the first time in a long time and started writing this sci-fi story. I don't want to give too many of the plot details away because I've lifted a lot of the elements that I still love about this story and put them in other books. But it was very much inspired by The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I read that when I was in high school, and I think this came out of that very much so. Like the secret society hidden in the desert, that was essentially what this book was going for. I worked on it for a long time, and it felt really hard the whole time, but it taught me so many lessons and it got me back into writing. And I will always love it for that reason. This was the project I was working on when I read Save the Cat for the first time, and I put a lot of pieces together and a lot of writing lessons together when I was writing this book that I just did not get the opportunity to learn in my writing program, because I had not been taught very much about how to approach novels. And so I was teaching myself a lot of stuff from scratch. I was learning a lot on AuthorTube. I was reading a lot of author craft books and interviews and just finding my way into the genre fiction world. Finally, the world where I felt like I belonged as a writer as opposed to lit fic writing and short fiction writing. I was definitely struggling as an early 20 something. It was definitely a tough time in my life where I was struggling in personal life to find my footing in adulthood. Writing was an escape, and I, didn't have a lot of hobbies outside of work, and getting back into writing was really helpful for me mentally, feeling like a person outside of work and figuring out who I wanted to be as an adult. Whew, what a time it is to be in your early 20s. And this project has so much of those feelings in between the lines for me. Um, wow. The other thing that was going on is I found AuthorTube during this time. I was early days, 2017, 2018. I never commented, I never was in live chats, but I was there lurking from the very start. And I had this gut feeling that I wanted to make videos. I felt like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be writing books and making videos about writing. Like, what have I been missing this whole time? It felt like a big spark. So I started trying to make videos, and obviously none of them saw the light of day, not until 2020, when I actually got brave enough to start my channel. But I was filming me working on this book, and a lot of the clips are too painfully awkward for me to even look at. I mean, there's a reason why they never saw the light of day. But as we're here celebrating 1,000 subscribers and the journey that this little channel has been on, I thought maybe I could dive into the vault and pull some of those clips and maybe we'll find me talking about some of the things that are going on in this book. I'm not sure. I haven't dug through those archives yet, and I haven't even looked at this in years. I have not even flipped through it, read through it, paged through it, touched it, nothing. So it's going to be a surprise to you and me both on what I find both in these pages and in my old videos. So yeah, that is what we're going to be doing. It might take me a few sittings, might take me a couple days to get through it, but here we go. We're going to start on this journey and start with Act 1, Chapter 1.
Here we go. I'm quaking in my boots right now. I'm afraid. Okay. All right. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're going. We're doing it. Okay. This is wild. This is wild.
Chapter 1. I don't know who she is, or exactly where she is. I only know what she's told me in her letters, and we both have made sure they don't contain very much. They're always short and vague. They come on folded cream pieces of paper, passed hand over hand through a secret network that I only know the first few halves of. In this world, paper has become almost obsolete, but for us, it's a talisman, able to hold all of our secrets in one small, safe square. I only know her as V. I know she's from West Quadrant, or so she tells me. The 4 quadrants are massive expanses of land, each its own corner of the continent. Telling me her quadrant isn't much of a giveaway, but she could also be lying, and she would be smart too. Sometimes her letters are spotty, and there will sometimes be months. Once it was even a full year that I didn't hear from her. From this, I gather that her situation is especially fraught. Something about it means she's always on the verge of being discovered, always on the edge of being caught. She's off again, on again, ready to flee one letter and then sweeping herself back into the shadows the next. Her silence conjures up images in my mind of dark rooms, shuttered windows, soft whispers. I wonder where she is trapped. I've wasted hours of my life by now trying to get any clue from her messages, trying to figure out where exactly she's stuck and how I can get her out. But I can't. She's written them well. V is the longest wing I've ever worked on. It's been 3 years, and still I've never been able to get her out of wherever she is and bring her here to Eden. Every time we've gotten close to setting a plan, it fails. She can never get away, and I'm left in the meeting place in my truck in the alley just waiting for her to never arrive. I don't know how hope keeps coming back. It's not so much that it ever leaves me, it's just that it won't ever die. I think this is what other people call stubborn. Mabel thinks I've given up on her by now, moved on to marks that can make it to me, and to some degree I have. The 3 years passed while I tried again and again to make the tangled blueprints of V's wing work somehow with her spotty messages. I've brought 20 more people into our sanctuary, but I know I'll never be satisfied until I figure her out. On the days when, out of the blue, I suddenly get another letter from V, I know I'll always answer her. I'll always offer her my help. The hardest part is always the moment when I have to accept defeat again, when I have to give up on her, at least for that time, and turn around, and travel back through the underground to Eden without my passenger. It's happened with other people too, but it never feels good. It's a guilt you can't quite shake. What if you had waited just one more hour, one more minute? Would they have rounded the corner if you had just been patient and given them 2 more breaths to get there? What if they were being followed and were counting on you? But it's a vicious cycle. She's live right now, as I call it, meaning she's been getting me messages every couple of weeks. We've been carrying on the same conversation. I'm drawing her out, she's hesitant to go. I can feel it under my skin. We're close to setting a date. I know she's anxious, I know she's running out of time, and certainly running out of luck. I don't know how much longer she can test fate.
Sitting at my desk, which is just freshly moved into my room so that I have no distractions and no excuses. And I'm still terrified of starting this book over again for maybe like the third or fourth time now. In March, I made a whole new outline, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, with everything that I know needed to change. I was working in first person present, which is one of my favorite styles to read, but it's so freaking hard to write. It really is. So I may change one or both of those things. Hopefully we'll see if I can get it done and get us all the way into this, hopefully, final version of the first draft. I guess I should probably start by saying where I'm starting from. And that is, last month I printed out the drafts that I had so far. I finally got to a point where I felt like I needed to see it in my hands and see what I had. And as soon as I started reading it, like maybe even 20 pages into it, I realized what was wrong with it, which is just awful because, you know, I could have put it together and looked at it and figured it out sooner, but I didn't. I had to print it out and see it in my hands for me to figure it out. And now I know what's wrong with it.
We're a few scenes in. I've changed into a comfy hoodie, I've clipped up the bangs, and I'm having an allergy attack. But I've been reading, so we need to check in. Please excuse the stuffy nose. If you are also an allergy girly, leave me a comment. Sometimes I just start sneezing for no reason, and I guess I'm just allergic to my old work. Right away, I am so glad that I stopped working on this book and I made the call to shelve it shortly after I printed this out. And at the same time, like, the first couple scenes are okay. And I specifically remember thinking I was always going to cut the prologue, which is what you just heard me read out loud. But actually, it's kind of the scene that is most interesting to me now when I read it. I think it's actually a good idea to have that other character's perspective. Looking back, I realize that this project should have been multi-POV because he is the more interesting one. It definitely is just a lot of telling and not showing, but I think the concept is more interesting. And then the rest of the book is, with the main character, and so I've read a couple scenes from her. Her first opening scene still exists in my fantasy novel. I lifted that up and re-transformed it, so that was interesting reading the sci-fi version of it. And one of the main differences is that in the sci-fi version, the city that she's in is like an Arctic city, and so she's out overnight and she's really, really cold. And in my fantasy book, I changed it to a more Mediterranean setting, so she's actually like in a sweltering hot night. So that was cool, and I think I actually like my descriptions of the cold better. I don't know if that's just because I'm from the north and I have a very vivid, visceral feeling of what it's like when you cannot stand being out in the cold even a second longer. And that's what I was trying to get at. Right after her opening scene, the second scene is she's coming home from her mission, and it's like classic straight out of a spy movie opener where the movie opens on the spy doing their mission, and then they come home and take off their wig and take off their uniform or hide it in a bag and get on the train and go home, and that is the scene that's happening next. And I thought that was fun. That was straight out of an action movie. From there, it's kind of all downhill, to be honest. After the first two scenes, I get to this third scene and I don't love it anymore. I just remember what a hard time I had getting into this character's head, and that's because I didn't stop to do any thought about who this character was, what she wanted, what motivated her. And I found some personality for her along the way, but she's just so blank. Her narration has no voice, her narration has no tone. It's just it's really unfun to read, and I remember it being unfun to write because it was just very plain. I can't tell how she feels about very much. I can't tell how she feels about being in this regime, in this dystopian world. I don't get a lot of point of view from her point of view, if that makes any sense. Third scene opens with her watching her sister in like a training fight, and I remember being very glad that I thought of giving her a sister, because giving her a sister helped me actually develop her character more, because by developing the sister, I developed what my main character was, you know, in opposition to that. That sibling relationship kind of became like the window for me to finally get into my main character's head. I have now read through a quarter of the book. Wow, I am remembering so many things about this that I just blocked out. It's really strangely done. It's strange in the way that I've plotted it, or didn't plot it, I guess I should say. The main thing that's happening in these pages is my main character is preparing for like a big competition that she has to be a part of. Very dystopia circa, 2010s. That was definitely a big genre convention, and it appeared in this book as well, but it didn't have any effect on the plot, and it didn't mean anything as far as her trajectory, and it was just something that she was stressing about. And I think that was part of why this beginning phase of the book was so boring, because it's like, what are we doing? Why do we care? I've set up a lot of really tense relationships with my main character and her family, and I wrote, stakes are questionable apart from saving main character from embarrassment. And those are just not interesting stakes. It's like not immediately apparent what the changes that she has to go through on her protagonistic journey. Other than that, it just feels very YA. It's all about my character doubting herself, comparing herself to her sister, wondering where her place is, not feeling skilled enough. It's just so plain. It's so plain. It bounces back and forth between past and present tense constantly, and I remember that I could not settle on what tense I wanted in between drafts, and it shows. So we're about to read a scene where my character is in a parade that's happening before the big competition, and it's like, who cares? Why do we care? And I remember asking myself that a lot as a writer when I was writing this. Why does this scene belong here? And I couldn't ever really figure out why. It wasn't until I realized like none of the scenes I was writing had any cookies in them. None of the scenes I was writing really had a point or a reason to advance the plot, and that's when I realized I had to trash this book, because everything I had written didn't matter. It didn't amount to a plot. So this is just one of many examples of that. But anyway, let's go read our parade scene.
All right, we are back again. My God, the dread that I feel. I've made myself a like banana cacao dessert drink to try and trick myself into being excited about doing this. it's not working. So let's chat because I have been reading this. Got through the first half of the book. I'm having so much not fun. It is so painful and nothing is happening. I can just tell that I was not having fun writing this book, and I was writing what I thought I should write and not what was interesting to me. And eventually I came to that conclusion. I remember very specifically the day I decided to shelve this book. I was having a really awful writing session where I was just clawing the words out, and I just came out of the room and was like, I hated that. That wasn't fun. I don't like writing dystopia. I want to write something that's fun. Isn't this supposed to be fun? What am I doing? I eventually came to that conclusion, and I'm so glad I did, but I can just tell in the beginning half of this book that I was forcing myself through it. Yeah, so she was about to go to the parade, and then she had to go do her trial, like her big competition trial. There were a few descriptions like every now and then that I liked, but it was like one line every 2 chapters that I would be like, oh, that was halfway decent. Really not a lot of salvageable things. The only thing here that I wrote down that was interesting was this little section where she's thinking about her relationship with her sister and why her sister never tried to help her. And I can't give too many details away of the situation that she is in, but just realizing that her sister had kind of turned a blind eye to her all these years. Wish that had been expanded upon. Yeah, the catalyst finally came right at the 25% mark, which I thought was kind of late. Her mom gives her some information that she's been keeping a secret. And it's like, why would you choose to do it now at the parade when they're in the public eye? It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. There was a little bit of description that I liked in that. Before I can think twice, I crumple the paper and tuck it inside my right glove so it rests inside the cup of my hand. I don't want to risk it falling out of my pockets. I need to hold it, keep squeezing it, and feel it crumple to know it's real. I liked that. However, 2 chapters ahead, it falls out of her pocket. And so it's just I'm constantly contradicting myself. Not just in that instance. There are a lot of instances. Here was one description that I liked when we're finally getting to my main character's trial. So she's in this big arena. Very easy for you to picture that, I'm sure, based on the genre. But she's walking out with her competitor. And I wrote, Hal and I keep marching further into the arena grounds. As I take in the stadium, I realize with a start that I can see myself. We're being broadcast in perfect definition on a large screen for all to see. I frown, and then milliseconds later, see the frown play out across my lips on screen. If there's one theme I could pull out of the first half of the book, it is about the mask that my main character wears when she's in public. And that's kind of the thing that she and her mom bond over, is having to pretend to be people that they're not, and having to keep up this public persona because of them being very prominent people. And so I thought that kind of played nicely on that theme. Did I do that completely by accident? Yes. Was any of that planned, or could I even have articulated that back when I was writing this? No. So she, spoiler alert, she loses her trial, and embarrassing. And then she's just kind of shuffling through life in this daze because she doesn't know how to move on from this. And I wrote on a sticky note, everything is just happening to her. She's so inactive. Ooh, and I think that's part of why this sequence feels so boring, because she's just kind of getting passed from chapter to chapter and not doing anything because she doesn't have a thing that she wants to be doing. She doesn't have a motivation to follow. She's so boring. actually am going to pull out my Save the Cat because I want to see where she recommends putting the catalyst. The catalyst should go 10% or earlier. And I had it at like the 25 to 30. Yikes. We're about to enter Act 2. And the break into 2 is just so weak because my character decides to go into the new world, but we have no idea why. Like, I have not described what her goal is. Like, is she going in to try and take down this group? Is she trying to join them? Is she just trying to find out what's up? Like, I have given no indication of what her end goal is, and I think that's because I changed it a bunch in different drafts and hadn't settled on how she was going to play it. And man, you can just see me not committing to anything throughout the whole first half of this book. Anyway, so the break into 2 feels very weak because she's made a decision, but we don't know why or what the end goal is or like what is motivating us to read this story in the first place. But anyway, I'm excited for Act 2 because we're going to get out of the boring situation that she was in where nothing was mattering. And we're going to introduce the love interest. The road trip story is going to start, and maybe there will be something else here to be of interest to make me turn the page, because up until now, I just want to DNF it. I don't want to continue. All right, let's read Act 2. I am having a really hard time with the dialogue now that my other main character is in the picture. It's not that it's like it's melodramatic, but that's not quite it. It's like all the dialogue is so full of information and no personality. Like, every line of dialogue is like me, the writer, trying to explain or exposit something. And it's exhausting. I guess the cool thing about it all, and like, I don't want to seem so negative this entire video, but the positive spin on it is that it makes me realize how much I've improved. Hopefully. I think I've really learned how to balance dramatic lines and how to balance exposition, and I think I've just learned a lot since then, and it's happened without me really noticing, but reading this has really just shined a big huge light on how much I've grown. I feel like I'm being a real hater in this video. Real hater towards myself, but it's showing me a lot that there is to like about my current writing, and so it's a two-sided coin.
We just need to finish this. I need to just be done with this. I need to be out of the misery. I want to be done. Okay, so we're now getting to the part of the draft where I started time skipping, and I didn't know what was going to go in between certain points, so I just skipped down the line until I knew something. And so now the draft is becoming wholly like Swiss cheese, and time has passed in between scenes, but I don't know what's happened in between them. I didn't know where I was going. I was really just pantsing and skipping to where my attention was. What I learned the most from this project was that it gets really hard to write like that for me, because I've lost track of my character's arc if I skip scenes like that. I don't know where their head is at. I don't know where their motivation is at. I don't know completely how they feel towards each other, and I'm trying to make it up and fill in those holes like I do know, but it just makes everything feel really inconsistent. This was me learning how to draft and learning how not to draft for me personally. We've arrived in a new setting that is a lot more interesting, and honestly, this is the part of the book that I still want to find a way to replicate. My main character gets down into this new world, into this new group of people, and then she finds out that there are disagreements even in this group, and there are, certain politics and alliances within this group that she doesn't understand, and she's kind of seeing it play out in front of her. There are your designated leaders of a group, and then there are people that people think should be the leaders, and there are disagreements of what should be done and how things should go, and they look interesting on the surface, but there's nothing underneath it because I just did a poor job with this novel. But on the surface, there's a lot of interesting dynamics that still feel like something to me.
It's done. Holy moly. This took so long for me to get through. I know this was supposed to be like a fun hee-haw kind of video, but it has been one of the hardest ones for me to make, simply because every molecule, every cell in my body did not ever want to pick this up again once I started reading it. It is just very, very poor, which I think we've established enough already, so I won't harp on it too much more. But it pretty much just went all downhill from page one, if I'm being honest. Once I got into the middle of the book, I started jumping all around. Didn't have a plot, didn't have an outline, and was really pantsing it and skipping scenes. That is just really tough because this book is all about secrets and lies, and it's supposed to be very dramatic. The whole like core dynamic in the book is I'm going to betray you before you betray me sort of thing, and it's really hard to write these ongoing secrets and lies when I'm not writing linearly and I'm pantsing. And I don't know who knows what or what's been said or what sort of trust has been established and why. And so I'm just like making those things up from scratch with each scene that I'm dropping into, and it does not work at all, as you can probably guess. Came up with this story when I was in high school, and even still, after all this time, there are still parts of it that I want to put into a book someday. There are still interesting character dynamics that I think are compelling. But they cannot look anything like this. Maybe after I've had a few days to like heal my brain from this experience, I will find some helpful inspiration from it all, but right now I just cannot wait to put this back on my shelf and never ever look at it ever again. But with that being said, I mean, I think so many lessons were learned in the writing of this project, and so I do want to give it its flowers and show it some love, because I learned so much about novel writing and plotting because I sat down for 2.5 years and tried and tried and tried and tried again and redrafted and redrafted and redrafted and I'm so proud of myself for doing all the trying. Whether or not this book came to any fruition, I was building my writing habits, I was building my writing muscle. I had always identified as a pantser. No surprises there, but I think this taught me that, like all people really do, I fall in the middle of that spectrum. And I learned a lot about how I like to pants and how I don't like to pants. And this project made pantsing really difficult. And I learned that pantsing can be really fun when I sit down and give myself enough information to have plot logic. Plot logic was completely missing from this, and that made pantsing really, really hard and stressful and unfun. And since then, I've done projects where I didn't do a lot of pre planning, but I had plot logic, and that made a lot of really fun, organic story moments happen. I didn't learn anything about fast drafting when I was a creative writing major, and if there was anything I could add to creative writing programs, it is the ability to fast draft. That was not even mentioned, that was not covered. And I think, if anything, I would love for creative writing programs to help students develop a healthy relationship with their first drafts and their fast drafts, and learning how to get to the end of a long project like this, and love it for its flaws. and and how to move forward from there, because those are all skills that I was teaching myself in the 2.5 years that I worked on this. So I hope this video was interesting, or fun, or silly, or motivating, or what have you to watch. I hope I didn't come across as too negative, but woof. I knew that I'd come a long way since this project, but I didn't really realize how far I had come. I just want to say again, thank you so much to anyone who watches my videos, who sticks around to comment, to hang out on the live streams. It means so much to me to have a writing community. It has changed my life 100,000%. I did not have very much of a writing community when I started working on this project. I got back into my local NaNoWriMo chapter. I, started watching AuthorTube. And those things put into motion the existence of this channel and all of the really wonderful internet friends that I've made because of it. So, if I had not gotten back into writing with this project, I would be missing out on some of the most special friendships and special experiences that I've had in my adult writing life. And I am so grateful to anyone who was a part of that. And if you're watching this video, then you are. So, with that, I just want to say thank you so much. And if you have a project like this sitting on your shelf, take a couple days to read it. And obviously, I'd love to watch a video if you do decide to do this, but think about how far you've come and what that project taught you. And I bet you will find a lot of fun lessons in doing that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.